If there's a crisis, will you be able to get any cash out of the bank? Will the banks even have any cash? Because as of last March, it is no longer a requirement. The banks do not have to have a single dollar bill in them. This is the Federal Reserve's Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System Policy Tools Reserve Requirements page. Now, I've been looking at this page since I wrote my book. I've had this bookmarked, and I look at it once in a while. There's minor changes here and there. Actually, the list of changes is all right here throughout the years. And they change reserve requirements and what banks have to be able to create loans. The required reserves and the reserves that the banks have are reserves that are at the Federal Reserve. So it's the commercial bank's account at the Federal Reserve. And the first $16.9 million worth of loans that they write always had a 0% reserve requirement. They didn't have to have a dime to be able to create the first $16.9 million that the bank creates. They just type it into your account. And then from 16.9 to 127.5 million, that tranche, they actually had to have 3% of that at the reserve account at the Federal Reserve. So if they loaned you $100, they type up brand new $100 into existence, and they have to find $3 they don't have to actually have it that day. They can go out and find it in the interbank lending market where they're all lending to each other at the end of the day when they settle accounts. Then this was 10%. So you had 0%, 3%, 10%, 0%, and 0%. And so that's how currency is created by banks and the reserves that are required for them to be able to create the currency. So it's all been taken to zero. So this means that the commercial banks can now do infinite currency creation. They don't have to have anything to back it up except your signature on a loan document, an auto loan, a mortgage. You want to do a $1 billion real estate project, whatever it is. They don't have to have anything to loan you. They just type brand new currency into the computer, and all of these reserve requirements were changed as effective March 26th. Now, what's more important, though, is this report, Aggregate Reserves of Depository Institutions. And you see the required reserve balances, and that as of April now is at 000 all the way across. But what's more concerning is if you go down to this table number 2, this is reserves, and this is vault cash too. There's a little footnote there too. You go down to April, no vault cash is required. This is in millions of dollars, so there's $88 billion worth of vault cash available, but none of it is required. And vault cash is a cost for the bank. They don't like vault cash. They would rather not have any cash on hand at all. Imagine if they didn't have any cash. You wouldn't need nearly as many tellers. You would only be accepting checks as deposits, and those can now be done over an app. So they really would love to get rid of the vault cash. This has all the costs of not just the vault and the security in the banks, but the armored cars, and they buy this vault cash by swapping in reserves that they're getting paid interest on by the Federal Reserve. They swap that and I believe there's a fee for printing the currency, a very small fee. But they're losing the interest when they convert to vault cash, and then they have the armored car costs and the cost of the vault and the added cost of security in the bank. Now, imagine banks with no cash. Is there a need for an armed guard in the bank anymore? I mean, there's nothing there to steal. You can't go in and hold a gun to somebody's head and make them type digits into your account. You're going to get caught. So the vault cash eligible to satisfy reserve requirements. That's what So this is used to satisfy reserve requirements. There are no more reserve requirements. Banks don't have to have any cash on hand, and they don't have to have any currency to loan you. They can now just create an infinite quantity of currency. So that was part of required reserves, the vault cash, and then all of the reserves, when you've got the 10% reserve ratio, was required to make the loans, and here it dropped to 0. So this was the chart I was waiting for. I would have done this video much, much earlier, but I was waiting for this chart to come up, and it says it was updated May 7th, and they always actually post the chart after this update, so it was a couple days later. And all of the daily videos, where I've had these tabs open on my web browser since March, waiting for this. So here you go. But now it's at required reserves is 0.000. And vault cash was a portion of this. Of the 214 billion, 88 billion was vault cash. Now, where did that go? It just goes over into another column on the bookkeeping of the banks and the Federal Reserve. It goes into excess reserves. So this is excess reserves of depository institutions. And what you see here is this big jump, and the 214 billion that was over in required reserves is part of that jump. The other part of it I'm going to explain in another video down the road, because it's very important to understand this. But this is excess reserves, and the banks are getting paid interest on this. It's called the interest rate on excess reserves. All you have to do is type IOER in this field here, and you'll see the interest rate on the excess reserves. So the total assets of the Federal Reserve is about $7 trillion. And you can see that there's a different angle here. I've lined this up so that the chart covers the same date range. And this has been slowing down the creation of currency, and it's just about to surpass $7 trillion total assets. Remember, the assets are equal to the liabilities plus paid-in capital. So on the other side of assets this is what they bought by creating currency, and the currency is on the other side in the liabilities column. But you'll notice right here that this is slowing down a little bit. But when we go back to excess reserves, that's speeding up. So there's a reason for that. I'm going to show you in a separate video, and it's actually a very important reason to understand. So this is the total monetary base. So base currency is all of the Federal Reserve currency. The Federal Reserve currency is all of the reserves that the banks have. All the banks have accounts at the Federal Reserve. They're issued these central bank dollars that never leave the central bank. The only central bank dollars that leave the central bank are Federal Reserve notes, the actual paper notes in our wallets. The stuff in your bank account is bank credit that the bank created by typing digits into your account. And as you've just seen, they don't have to actually have anything to loan you. They just type digits into your account, any quantity you want. As long as they think that you can pay them back, your signature puts a set of handcuffs on you to pay them back, and whatever they've loaned you on, they can foreclose against. But the total monetary base has exploded, and we're now about to, we're getting close to 5 trillion on the monetary base. Now, before the crisis of 2008, this was at 0.85 trillion. 0 point something, is my point here. 0 point, and here we are at 5. That's a big difference. And some of this is starting to show up in circulation. This is the M2 money stock, which the Federal Reserve says is the largest measure of the currency supply. They used to have an M3, and they discontinued that back in March of 2006. it was the broadest measure of the currency supply. And you can see that this has gone vertical in just the last several weeks here. So from March 9th to today, this is going vertical. And it has gained roughly $2.25 trillion there, it looks like. So that's important. But this is what cracks me up. They say that this is the broadest measure of the currency supply. So of the $17.3 trillion that's available of the total money stock, the largest measure of the money stock, 20.5 trillion of the 17.5 is available instantly. This is, they call it money, I call it currency. So this is currency of zero maturity. They don't know the difference between money and currency. I do. So money of zero maturity, they call it money stock. And that means currency that is instantly available right now. So what they do is they take M2 minus time deposits, and then they add in the big money market funds and stuff. And that has really grown here. It's taken off. It was at 17.3 and now it's at 20.5. So the currency supply is exploding, but these money market funds are money market funds over, I can't remember the size of them. It used to say down in these notes here, but you can find out on the Fed's website. So this includes the really big money that the brokerage houses are holding and stuff like that. And so the bailouts and everything, if you didn't receive, so this is what, $3 trillion? Yeah, there's more than $3 trillion here that is in checking accounts somewhere, accounts that are instantly accessible. $3 trillion, I have to do the math, but there's 330 million people in the United States. What is your percentage of that 3 trillion? And if you didn't get it, then it's unevenly distributed. And there's something called the Cantillon Effect that we've talked about before. When you create new currency, it steals purchasing power from the rest of society and transfers it to whoever gets to spend that currency first. Whoever receives that currency gets that stolen wealth. So the currency supply around the world is exploding. The wealthiest people on the planet are getting it, and it's all coming out of our pockets. I want to thank you for watching. Just remember, the banks aren't required to have any cash on hand in case you want some. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time.